Time to tell you about the 36th Chamber of Shaolin, one of my favorite movies of all time, a classic of the Kung Fu genre, a classic of any genre. Now, here in the West, if we say the words Kung Fu movie, who do we think of first? What immediately springs to mind? Usually it's Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, and rightly so. Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan have earned the right to be considered in that way because of what they did in bringing the Kung Fu genre to the West. So they've earned their place in history and they've earned that right. But once, if you're a Westerner and you're into Kung Fu movies, once you delve a bit deeper than just Bruce Lee and just Jackie Chan, once you go deeper into the rabbit hole, so to speak, you start to discover more and more about Hong Kong action cinema and the Hong Kong studios from the 70s and 80s, and more about the types of Kung Fu movies they were making. And in particular, you may discover the Shaw Brothers studio and what they call the Shaolin cycle. The Shaolin cycle of movies, which focused on a historical period where in Cantonese they called it Fan Qing Fok Ming, which is a way of saying those people who were loyal to the Ming dynasty wanted to restore the Ming dynasty, and they saw the Qing dynasty as oppressors, as usurpers, and the idea being that the people from the Qing dynasty were Manchus, people who came in from the north and imposed their ways on the Han Chinese, who were primarily from the south, primarily Cantonese speakers. The Manchus and the Qing dynasty were primarily Mandarin speakers, imposing Mandarin and imposing their ways on the locals, who were mainly Southerners, loyal to the Ming dynasty, and mainly Cantonese speakers. And this historical political aspect is the focus of the Shaolin cycle of films, where people who are loyal to the Ming would learn Kung Fu, usually at the Shaolin Temple, or if they couldn't get to the Shaolin Temple, they'd learn Kung Fu from somebody who had graduated from the Shaolin Temple, and they would use their Kung Fu skills to fight oppression, to fight the bullies, and to fight injustice. So this film, The 36th Chamber of Shaolin, has a very, very similar story to that. At the beginning, we see the Manchus, the Qing dynasty, oppressing some locals, bullying them as usual, bullying them for no reason, treating them harshly, oppressing them, causing them injustices. And we see the locals feeling helpless and powerless, how to fight back. And then one of the local lads, his dad gets killed, and fearing for his own life, he runs away. He stumbles upon the Shaolin Temple. He gets into the Shaolin Temple. And once he's in the Shaolin Temple, you start to see the beauty of this film. And he discovers that the Shaolin Temple has 35 chambers. And in each of the 35 chambers, you learn a different aspect of Kung Fu. You train a different part of your body. And you see the grueling. This film depicts the day-by-day grueling training. What you have to put your body through. It's not easy. Learning Kung Fu is not easy. What you have to put your body through to learn Kung Fu and to become a Kung Fu master. Almost like torturing your body. The different 35 chambers and what happens in each of the chambers and how that trains your body. And of course, it's difficult at first, but if you can come out the other side, you come out a changed man, a changed person. You have a stronger health, stronger character. And of course, you know Kung Fu, so you can defend yourself, defend your loved ones. And in the case of the character here, played by Gordon Liu, or Lau Kar Leung, he plays the role of San Da, Three Virtues. In the case of this character, he can actually gain vengeance for the killing of his father and gain vengeance for his people against the Manchu oppressors. And that's the main plot line. We see many beautiful things in this film. We see the training sequences. We see San Da, once he graduates from all 35 chambers, saying to the Shaolin Temple, let's create a 36th chamber. hence the title of the movie, meaning the 36th chamber could be taking the kung fu outside the temple and teaching kung fu to the locals, to the local lay people outside, so that they can learn to help in the struggle against the Qing dynasty and to help restore the Ming dynasty. Fan, Qing, Fok Ming. So it's a great story. The story, like most kung fu stories, makes you side with the underdog, makes you side with the oppressor. You root for them in their fight for justice, in their fight for revenge, in their fight for restoring honor and pride. These kinds of themes are very important in kung fu movies. It's particularly important in this one. This film is directed by Lau Kar Leung, the absolute legend. And it's important to note that Lau Kar Leung is not just a movie director. He was a real-life master of kung fu, of a style called Hong Ga or Hong Kyun. Nowadays, in the West, we're very familiar with Wing Chun because of the Ip Man movies, but also because we all know that Bruce Lee is the most famous kung fu person we know in this country and in the West. And Bruce Lee, we know, studied Wing Chun before creating his own style, Jeet Kune Do. So we're familiar with that, but Hong Ga is really the representative style of Southern Shaolin. When people say Southern Shaolin, what they really mean is Hong Ga or Hong Kyun, not so much the Wing Chun. And at the Shaolin Temple, when they were studying the 5 animals at the Shaolin Temple, like tiger style, the tiger, the dragon, the leopard, the snake and the crane, that really is the Hong Ga tradition and the Hong Ga lineage. And Lau Kar Leung, who's the director of this film, he is a real-life kung fu master from that Hong Ga lineage. So starting at the Southern Shaolin Temple, the abbot of that temple was called Ji Xin. Ji Xin, in this movie, teaches Sanda, and in real life, Ji Xin taught somebody called Hong Hei Kun. And Hong Ga is actually named after the surname of Hong Hei Kun. Then Hong Hei Kun taught somebody called Lok Ah Choi. Lok Ah Choi taught somebody called Wong Kei Ying. And Wong Kei Ying taught his own son, Wong Fei Hong. And Wong Fei Hong is maybe the most famous folk hero in the history of Chinese Kung Fu and Chinese Kung Fu movies. We'll have to do a separate video about Wong Fei Hong and Wong Fei Hong movies. And then Wong Fei Hong taught Lam Sai Wing, and Lam Sai Wing, once he was in Hong Kong, then taught Lao Zam and Chan Hong Chong and many other disciples, famous disciples. And Lao Zam, who was one of Lam Sai Wing's disciples, is the father of Lau Kar Leung, and he taught his son Lau Kar Leung, and Lau Kar Leung is the director of this film. So you can see that when he's directing this film and choreographing the moves, he's doing it from inside his heart, from his own passion, because that's the style of his dad. That's the style of the history of the Kung Fu masters. He comes from that lineage. And you can see that passion on screen, not just in this film, but in other films that I'll talk about in other videos. So 36 Chamber of Shaolin, it's an all-time classic. It's influenced even people in America, famous American rap group, the Wu-Tang Clan. It's influenced so many people. It's had so many influences on action cinema, on Kung Fu choreography. It's one of the all-time classic Kung Fu films. It's an all-time classic of cinema. And I highly recommend you watch it if you haven't already seen it. 36 Chamber of Shaolin. Go check it out.